Okay, here is the second part of the video lecture series on the sociological theories. We just finished up functionalism, and again, your textbook in Chapter 4 will supplement nicely what we're talking about here. So I'm encouraging you to go back and read the Chapter 4 if you have not done that. Now, with symbolic interactionism, this perspective also, directs sociologists to consider the symbols and the details of everyday life. We're talking again, remember the subjective meanings of things, of items that we talked about when we talked about Max Weber last week. What these symbols mean, how people interact with each other. Everything has symbolic meaning. And this is kind of where we're heading with this perspective. For example, consider applying symbolic interactionism to the American institution of marriage. We have symbols to include wedding bands, vows of lifelong commitment, the white bridal dress, wedding cake, etc., etc. These all symbolize specific things that sort of influence how we think, and even to some point mandate our behaviors in settings where these symbols are involved. Now, sometimes things can symbolize, items can symbolize different things. For example, one spouse may see their circular wedding ring as symbolizing never-ending love, while the other may see them as a mere financial expense. And faulty communication can result from differences in the perception of the same events and the same symbols. So we see, the wedding rings here symbolize very specific things generally within our culture. The white wedding dress has traditionally symbolized chastity and purity, perhaps even virginity. Now, conflict theory. This is the last of the three major theories that we'll talk about, where functionalism focuses on the functioning of the different parts of society, and where symbolic interactionism focuses on the symbolic meanings that we attach to things in society. The conflict perspective focuses on power. I would take you back to our lengthy discussion of Karl Marx and his idea that those who are in possession of the means of production basically have most, if not all, of the power in society, and those without the power basically are sort of at the mercy of those who are in power. And if you want to look at how society is really structured, then you need to look at the conflict that exists within society. So while the first two perspectives focus on the positive aspects of society that contribute to its stability, the conflict perspective here focuses on the negative, conflicted, and ever-changing nature of society. So again, we're looking at power as a main source here. Unlike the functionalists who defend the status quo, avoid social change, and believe people cooperate to affect social order, conflict theorists challenge the status quo, encourage social change even when it means revolution. Again, think of the discussion of Karl Marx that we had last week. They believe the rich and the powerful people force social order on the poor and the weak. Remember our discussion, of the Industrial Revolution. The few at the very top of the power structure who owned the factories, who owned the means of production, exploited and alienated, took advantage of those who were at the bottom, who were working in these factories. So, conflict theorists may interpret an elite board of regents raising tuition to pay for new programs that raise the prestige of a local college as self-serving rather than as beneficial for students. Whereas American sociologists in the 40s and 50s generally ignored the conflict perspective in favor of functionalism, the tumultuous 1960s saw American sociologists gain considerable interest in conflict theory. They also expanded Karl Marx's ideas that the key conflict in society was strictly economic. Conflict theorists note that unequal groups usually have conflicting values and agendas. You can think of that, workers versus management. Generally, they have conflicting values and agendas. Republicans versus Democrats. We could keep going on and on forever. African Americans versus Caucasians. We tend to sort of assume and understand that there are unequal, or rather conflicting values and agendas that result in competition. And this constant competition between these groups of people form the ever form the basis for our ever-changing nature of society. And we have two levels of sociological analysis. We have the macro and the micro level. And I know we talked about these in class. Macro means big, evaluating social events or phenomena that happen on a large-scale basis. The example I'm going to use, as a sociologist, I'm examining how much money our U.S. government wastes. I think we can generally agree that our government wastes a lot of money. And I'm looking at this on a national level, billions and billions of dollars of waste. So my focus is on the U.S. government and how much money the U.S. government wastes. That's macro level analysis, looking at the bigger picture. Conversely, if I want to look at things on a smaller scale, micro level analysis. Micro literally means small or little. As a sociologist, I'm looking at how much money our government wastes. Still same thing, except now, instead of looking at it on a national level, I'm focused on how much the taxes increase for people in one small community in Iowa, for example, as a result of government spending. So my focus here is on a small town in the state of Iowa. And that's it for that part. The last of the two parts on social theory. Thank you very much.